You'll be hearing my voice today and the voice of Roger Einbecker. We run the McThrows.com website. You'll also hear, of course, the voice of Vésteinn Hafsteinsson, who's with us courtesy of Global Throwing. You won't see our faces today, but Vésteinn is the handsome fellow pictured right here. And for Roger and me, just imagine a better looking version of George Clooney, and you'll have it about right. Hey, real quick, just wanted to mention that we'll have another webinar next week, also at 12 o'clock p.m. CST. This one will feature J.C. Lambert, the coach of world hammer champion Deanna Price. So check out McThrows.com to register. We'll also send out emails regarding that presentation. During today's webinar, we'd like you to please use the Q&A function to submit questions. You can do that throughout the webinar. Later on in the presentation, Roger will communicate your questions to Vésteinn. So just type them in there as they pop into your head. We're going to have two different contests today. For the first, we'd like you to use email to make a guess as to Daniel Stahl's training PB, so his best throw in practice. And again, please email your guesses for that. Everyone has my email address through the Zoom invite. We're going to try to keep the Q&A function clear for questions, but please submit a guess. We'd like your guesses by 3 o'clock CST today. The winner will get free access to Vésteinn's Elite Discus Practical Throwing Session Coach Tube lecture. I recently watched that lecture, and it's fantastic. In it, you get to see Vésteinn put Daniel Ståhl, Simon Pettersson, and Jakob Gardenkrantz through the drills that he uses to build technique. It is really, really worth watching. Vésteinn also has several more lectures available on CoachTube. And as a bonus for attending this webinar, you can get 20% off on the purchase of those lectures. That's the promo code right there, and we'll remind you of it again later. And Global Throwing is going to send everybody an email with that on there, so you don't have to memorize it right now. Ladies and gents, it is my pleasure to introduce to you one of the world's great throws coaches. During a 10-year career as a professional discus thrower, he represented Iceland in 5 world championships and 4 Olympic games. As a coach, he guided his athletes to 17 medals in European championships, world championships, and Olympic games. Under his guidance, Gerd Kanter became world and Olympic discus champion. And in 2019, Daniel Ståhl became world discus champion. I could go on for a long time about his experiences and his achievements as a coach, but I know you're anxious to hear from him. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Vésteinn Hafsteinsson.
Thank you, Dan. I'm very happy to be able to do this with you guys, and I appreciate the effort that you're putting in there. I met Daniel Ståhl as a youngster when he was 17 years of age, and had a session with him indoors in Stockholm. And at that time, Daniel was very big and tall kid, young kid, kind of uncontrolled. And I just liked the uncontrolled young individual that was just all over the place. He really didn't know what he was doing. He was throwing to the right, to the left. He was throwing up and down and missing the discus and having a lot of fun and screaming and laughing. And in that session, I decided this is something very, very interesting. Then on and off during the next 2 years, we met a guy in his club in Stockholm called me Åke Russ and asked me once in a while when I was in Stockholm doing lectures, can you come and help Daniel in one session? And I did during 2 years' time or something, like 6 sessions with him. And it was always the same. It was always a lot of laughs. It was always a lot of uncontrolled physical ability. And I was getting pretty sure that I'm going to coach this guy sooner or later. And then in July of 2011, 2 years later, when he was 19 years of age, I had a session with him in Stockholm on the outdoor throwing field, and decided I'm gonna ask his mom and dad and if I could get 1 minute with him. And I asked him, can I get Daniel with me here? And I walked 100 meters away. I took around his shoulder and said, Daniel, I'm gonna give you a choice. You can keep on doing what you're doing and being just a regular guy and keep on with your life that there's really nothing wrong with, or do you want to be the best discus thrower in the world? And Daniel laughed his funny laugh and said, ha, 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 of course I want to be the best discus thrower in the world. And then I said, well, then you have to work with me. And he decided to do that July of 2011. And I told him it's going to take 8 to 10 years to be the best guy in the world. And after 8 years, he won the World Championships in 2019. You see on the screen there his progress through the years. He's a world champion since 2019. He was a world silver medalist in 2017. And he won the European silver in Berlin in 2018. He's the 4th to 5th best thrower of all time, with Yuri Tumshev from Russia, 71.86. He's a world season leader, 2016, 17, 18, and 19. And he has thrown 4 competitions over 70 meters and 8 throws total and most of them in regular stadiums. His average, 10 best average through 10 best competitions is 70.237. That is unbelievable. And he had the 2nd best season of all time this last season, 2019, where he had 69.94 on top 10 results. 50th best, 68.13, and 100 best, 65.89. And he's climbing. He's not done. And I hope he's going to throw much further. That is our goal, and that's pretty much like the presentation of Daniel Ståhl.
Yes, and did Daniel do any other sports when he was younger?
Yeah, he was a hockey player, a pretty good one, and played with some of the professionals when he was the professionals that are playing now in the NHL in America. He has played with few of those and keeps contact with him. And so he was a hockey player when he was young until he was like 16 years of age.
Wow. He would be a very intimidating presence on a pair of skates, I'll bet. Hey, so you want to start out then with the video? Should we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got a video of Daniel's big throw. We'll watch a couple times, and then Vésteinn's going to dig into the positions. So this was last year in Stockholm, correct?
Yes.
How did you feel when you saw that throw land and he fouled it?
Well, the reason for I picked this throw to analyze is because it is my favorite throw. And Daniel has thrown many throws during the career, and this is my favorite one.
It's your favorite technically?
It's like favorite in all types of things. It's like in a big Diamond League meet, it's almost 73 meters. It's unbelievable speed, pretty good technique, and just so much capacity. I just love it.
Awesome. We're going to go back to the slides now and start breaking down the positions. And there we have Daniel at the back. What do you see there, Coach?
Well, if you look at Daniel there, the arms that are 2 meters 20 long are as long as they possibly can. He has a backswing that is a little bit over parallel that I actually like. He gets very long reach of motion. The discus is a little bit over the shoulder, and it's very relaxed and long. And he moves the weight from the left to the middle and to the right. He didn't throw like that in the beginning with me in 2014. But as a coach, I think a guy like Daniel that is 2 meter 02 long and has 2 meter 20 arms, we have to use the tools that he has. And because of that, we have developed it to that the swing is very long, because this guy is strong as a bull and smooth as a cat. And then we should use that instead of have a short backswing.
Could you talk a little bit, Coach, on the position of his left foot here as he finishes his windup?
Yeah, like point number 2 says discus over the shoulder in contact on the left foot. That means I always look when the discus stops. You pretty much swing on the discus, pretty much the acceleration of the discus goes down to 0 at the end of the backswing. Then you actually have contact on the left foot. And Daniel does that very well. We work very much on that you are going to have a contact, even though you move the weight all the way to the right. And then you have a connection between the left foot and the discus, because the left foot starts the throw.
And if my memory is correct, Gerd Kanter had a much shorter windup than that. Is that correct?
Yeah, and if you look from like how Daniel threw with me in 2014 when he got his international breakthrough and threw early a huge PB in Irvine in California in 2014. Then he had the center of gravity in the middle, and he just turned around like Gerd Kanter. Mm-hmm. So I actually started with Daniel in a similar way as I had Gerd. But just if I use few seconds on explaining why Gerd had his start, was that John Powell was a big influencer in my life and taught me how to throw the discus in a lot of ways. And he had a very short start with the weight on the left when he started. And I ended up throwing like that, and it's a simple way of doing it. It's much harder to do it like Daniel, and Gerd used to look like that when he came to me, but he couldn't handle it. And then I was going to go and do with Gerd what I've done with Daniel now, that I was going to let him have the center of gravity in the middle, have a short backswing, have a good contact on the left, and then be able to throw pretty far. It ended up being that he threw his whole career like that. And because of that, a lot of people think that my way of throwing the discus or coaching the discus is the same as Gerd Kanter, but it was never believed from my point of view to be the way he was going to throw. He just did it really well, won the Olympic gold and world championship like that, and we never changed it. But in Daniel Ståhl's swing, I always wanted to have it like that with Daniel, even though we started the other way.
In your Coach Tube lecture, where you have Daniel and Simone and Jakob doing the drills, you work on the wind-up with them, and all 3 of them have slightly different wind-ups. And that's just a matter of adapting your principles to each individual athlete?
Yes. Every person has their own moves, and the older and more experienced I get, I look more at how they move. And even though they move by the school book wrong, they move in that way for a reason. They want to move in that movement. They've done thousands of repetitions, maybe when they come to me and I get to be their coach. And then I try to look at why are they moving like that? And are they moving fast like that? And then I don't change it too much. I try to adjust it. And I always try to work with each athlete what they feel. And I was not like that when I was younger as a coach. Then I wanted to throw like Mac Wilkins because he was my idol, and then he ended up throwing like John Powell. And then at the end, I found this model that was somewhere in between with Gerd Kanter. And then I thought, okay, I found a model. Now everybody's going to throw like that. But then by time, I've gotten to coach unbelievable talent from all over the world. And I look more and more on how they move, because they want to move in that way for a reason and then try to go from there.
Coach, on this particular throw, is there a reason that Daniel is starting a little more to the left in the back?
No, it's a mistake. A lot of people do that. I changed it after this meet because Daniel throws few times in the cage. When he throws really, really hard, where he was throwing there, he was worried about throwing in the cage, and he had been throwing in few meets at that time, and I started to notice that he had moved himself a little bit in the circle to the left. And after this meet, I changed it because you should throw in the direction of the throw. So if you start to move and you go to the left and then you throw in the case to the right, it's actually a mistake. So it was a good point, Roger, that you pointed it out. And coaches that are listening, really look for this. If you are throwing in the cage, to a certain extent, you could move just for the time being in that particular meet, but do not do it for good, because then you are going in the wrong direction in relation to where you should go. We can go on to the next picture. Then
Let's do it. There we go.
If you look at where he has his arms there, then I think this is a very good school example of how to do it, and very similar to how Gerd Kanter did it, even though he had a shorter. There is the position where Gerd pretty much started. And if you look at the arms, left arm is in front and right arm is way back, so it's like very good arm position. And then you see there why we do squats. He's in a high squat there, or like a half squat. And the footwork is very good. He has started to turn the left foot and he's low on the heel, because if you're high on the heel there, you're going to drop it when you go into the middle. So you're low on the heel when you turn. He hasn't moved the right foot in the circle at all. And very, very strong hips. In all sports, you have to have very, very strong hips, and he's very good on that. Super long and super relaxed. So this position is really, really good, and very good example on you could start there and swing around the center of gravity, where you have the center of gravity in the middle, or you could go the more advanced way, like Daniel is doing, moving the weight all over and hit this position when you are starting the turn. So this is a very good position of Daniel, and I could not really see that he could do it much better.
All right, should we take a look at the next one?
Yeah, like he turns the left foot there, and the arms are very good too. He's going around the left foot, knee, hip, shoulder axis. Right arm is behind the butt and low. And left turn turns on a strong left hip. Right leg is long and foot is open. So you're leading with the inside of the thigh, and it's a very dynamic and relaxed and long turn. I am working on a thing with Daniel now that I would like people to notice, that he could have a little bit more tension in between the knees there. little bit like Fredrik Dakers is doing. I think Fredrik Dakers has a very, very good turn where he has a very good tension in between the thighs or the knees. Daniel is taking the leg little bit like, and doesn't get maybe the maximum turn tension out of it. But he does it this way, he has always done it this way, and the timing is very good. So in that case, this looks good, but if there is anything to say that could be done better, is to turn the left foot and leave the right leg maybe a little bit longer on the ground, so you would get the tension before the right foot comes off the ground. And but usually he hits the left foot, knee, hip, shoulder axis really well when he goes around. That's one of his trademarks, one of his strong things. That is his long swing, his squat position, and then when the right foot comes off the ground, how strong hip he has, the left hip. I'm very much in on that, but the hip has to be very, very strong.
Coach, you mentioned the possibility of Daniel perhaps keeping his right foot down just a bit longer. Is that an individual thing as well, or do you have a certain theory about that, about when the right foot should come up?
No, like people talk very often about, are you like a right leg guy or a left leg guy?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have right arm, we have left arm. If you lift up the right arm, the left arm goes down. If you're early with your right leg, you're slow with your left. This has to work in a sequence. I'm not like a right leg guy or a left leg guy or early right leg guy or strong left hip guy. I look at it in a sequence. It has to be in a sequence. And when the left foot is turning, and Daniel starts to turn it pretty early, he could sometimes get a little bit more tension in between his knees, even though the arms are long. And that means that you could present it that he's keeping the right leg a little bit longer on the ground, or you could also present it that he needs to turn more active on the left. But you have to find the sequence, and you have to look at how the athlete feels and how he moves. So there's no right and wrong answer here in relation to earlier right leg, more turn on the left. You have to find it in a sequence. You have to talk about both at the same time.
Coach, do you have any thoughts on the left foot there? Where should the weight be on the left foot?
He could have more weight on the left knee, but I like how he turns with a low heel, because he's going to have a problem in the next picture that I'm going to explain.
Okay.
And we could maybe go over to that one.
Well,
then,
could I elaborate on that before you leave that last one?
Sure.
Yeah.
So Mac Wilkins, if I remember correctly, used to say you want to turn on the inside of the ball of your left foot. It looks like Daniel might be in this throw, and again, this could be one example of one specific point. It doesn't necessarily represent his average, but it looks like he might be out on the outside edge, almost like he's not quite into a hammer turn, but definitely not on the ball side of the foot, more on the outside of the foot.
No, like Mac is right in that if you teach kids how to turn the foot, you should turn on the inside of the foot with weight on it, and then that is the right way of doing it. Then Daniel is turning well from the swing into the turn until his right leg comes off the ground. Then he turns into a problem. He goes a little bit on the outside to throw foot. Gerd Kanter did the same. Mac himself did the same. I did the same. A lot of guys did the same. And it's one of those mysteries of discus throwing. Why do we not keep on turning the left foot? There's a lot of reasons for that. And sometimes people get really caught up on it. I do not get. I have to say if I'm totally honest, Gerd really never managed to be able to turn on the inside of the foot. Daniel is a little bit better than Gerd is on that. But you're right, Roger, he is on the outside of the foot a little bit there. But I don't get too caught up on it if I get the job done. But if I would teach a kid, inside of the foot.
Okay.
There the foot stops. I did that, Mac did that, Gerd Kanter did it. And I tried to keep on turning the foot with Gerd for 3.5 years, and I gave up on it. And instead of trying to turn the foot further, we tried to drop the knee more. And in one way or another, Daniel thinks the same. But if you look at this position, the foot stops, right leg is out there, right foot is open, left arm is in front, and discus is still right, in a way behind the butt and low. In that case, this position is very good, and his left hip is very strong. But there is a problem here. He stops the left foot, and that means that he would be able to get more speed across the circle if it would not stop. But coaches try to find a way. If you have a kid or a young man or a girl that is throwing, and you've been trying to teach them to turn the foot and keep on turning the foot, and it doesn't work, do not get caught up on it. Try to find another way to get across the circle and get the speed, because this is one of the hardest things to do because a lot of people turn the foot automatically and don't have a clue why they do it right, and then there are others that have a very big problems with it. I could never do it myself. Daniel, I worked pretty much with Daniel trying to get it better, and we don't get it better than this. So I work on other things. But here is the first, you could say, a mistake or a weakness in Daniel's throw. Still, if you look at the overall pitch, it's good. Open right foot, left arm in front, very strong hip, low right arm and discus, and very good balance.
Coach, when you say open right foot, do you mean the toes out a bit like Daniel has there?
Yeah, because if you turn the foot in a circle in the turn, you get very, very narrow right leg. And we know that doesn't work. Of course, it's more important in rotational shot put than discus, but I think this open right foot where you're leading with your inside of the right thigh is a good discus right leg.
Coach, could you elaborate on the term strong left hip in this position?
When you see him there, a lot of people, I think the biggest problem in the discus, and 95% of my work is done when right leg comes off the ground in the turn. When right leg comes off the ground in the turn, people crash on the left hip. And if they crash on the left hip, they also crash when you are in this position going into the sprint. That means mostly that there is no speed in the sprint. But if you look at Daniel's left knee, left foot is pretty good there, like in relation to that. He's on the toe, left knee is like dropping down, and his left hip is strong. He has a very good sprint position to be able to push it at the same time as he is pushing the right leg across the circle.
So if he were to, as you say, crash with his left hip, would that mean his left hip and knee might be pointing down the left foul line?
Yeah, and his left arm would be much more open there.
Okay.
It would be over rotation. And I think people should use a lot of time on trying to figure that out, throw a lot of throws from static position, and throw a lot of throw from pre-turn position, where you have the weight on the left foot, static, and learn not to drop everything and crash instead of turning around the hip and then sprinting across the circle like a sprinter.
So the left hip and leg have to sort of hold their position so the right hip and leg can come out and around it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the turn are trying to go too deep too early.
Mm-hmm.
I try to turn on the inside of the foot and do not go down. Just turn around the hip when the right foot comes off the ground in the turn. And then when you go forward, the knee goes down. But a lot of people are too deep and too much bent over also. Try to be upright and tall in the turn. And then when you come around with your right foot open, like I use terminology about, to drop the knee then across the circle.
Got it.
It's actually like a regular sprint with a discus in your hand. Left arm in front, right leg, right arm behind, and strong hips. Strong hips, extremely important in all sports, has nothing to do with discus. It's just in all sports. We know if a high jumper or a hurdler or javelin thrower breaks their hips, everything goes to pieces.
Did you work with Daniel on a cue for coming out of the back where he might transition from the turn to the sprint, so to speak? Does he have a cue, mental cue?
Yeah, we throw a lot of static throws. We do a lot of walkthroughs and static throws and pre-turn throws through the years. Every session to like today is 5 to 10 static throws in the start where he goes around the hip and times in the long step into the middle. And the key is to be strong in the hip and take a long step forward and keep the discus behind the butt and left arm in front, like a regular step, he walks through, he does a lot of static stuff. And that is pretty much what made him so good in 2019. It was a lot of walkthroughs and a lot of static throws to find the timing of the turn into the sprint. Because his weakness in 2016-17 was that he was almost walking through the circle with a too short step forward. And that made him come a little bit too late down with the left leg in the paw position. And that, of course, doesn't give you as much speed. Here, what I like about this picture, I dislike some things, but it drives very, very hard across the circle. I'm very much for building up tension in the swing and the turn, where you get tension in between your knees. When right leg comes off the ground in the turn and left foot and hip is strong, you drive like crazy across the circle. Action-reaction principle. That's going to give you an automatic finish. And this is the best drive I've ever seen Daniel do ever in any throw. He's just going, you have to look at this guy. He is unbelievably big. And he's driving across like crazy. He's sprinting across the circle. Left arm pulls in. I say they're okay because of the ice skating method where you take in your arm, you get faster. You could also let him hold more, but it would probably not result in a longer throw because he would not be as fast. Right arm goes from low towards high. I'm very much on how the path is around from parallel to 30 centimeters under parallel, going into the middle 30 centimeters under, and then you get 30 centimeters over parallel. The overall difference is 60 centimeters approximately, that is 2 feet, from the low point to the high point. Everybody that knows Gerd Kanter knows that he had a very high orbit, where the path of the discus went very high. It ended up being his trademark, and it ended up being the only thing he could do at the end of his career, when he had lost his speed when he was 38, 39 years old, he could still throw very far, like 65 meters, and still get medals in European championships and stuff like that because of his high orbit. And very much because of how many meters and how many feet does the discus travel from the swing through the throw. It's 9 meters. The discus travels around you 9 meters. That's 10 feet. And that means that, you know, it's unbelievably important how the discus path is. And Daniel is really good on this throw. It's going up there. And it's very long moves, very relaxed, very dynamic. And it goes from low to high.
Coach, would you mind elaborating on how you ended up having Gerd use that really high orbit?
Well, it's a funny story. Jürgen Schultz asked me once, the world record holder, why are you letting him throw it so high up? And I said, well, I'm not letting him do it. He's just doing it. And then in like early ages, Gerd threw a huge PB in a meet in, I think it was in Sevilla in Spain, in no wind, and threw 68.50. And I got that throw on a video. I was not with him then, and it was a very high orbit. And those guys that are following Lukas Weisheidinger, it's built on biomechanics. If you can get this high orbit and you can get, you know, through the throw like that, it is actually very good. It's like this action-reaction principle. Like Weisheidinger from Austria, he throws the discus extremely high up, and then it goes really low. And if he catches it, it goes 69 meters. His PP is 68.98. But it's a very risky business. So my opinion has always been, I want to have this orbit like Virgilius Alekna had in the year 2000, when Mac Wilkins had the best orbit. He threw different through the years, but a lot of those, Jürgen Schultz, unbelievably nice high point. That's pretty much my original idea. But then I'm a coach that I don't take away something very strong when a kid has just thrown a PB of 68.50 and he's still very young, like Gerd Kanter did. And because of that, I'm actually very flexible on how high it's going to be. But Daniel has a very good path of the discus.
And would you say that what keeps most people from using that high orbit is they're just not flexible enough, or some other reason?
I'm not sure why people are not. I think a lot of the guys, even on the world stage, are not carrying the discus the right way around. I don't know. I just think it's very important, and I learned it as a young guy from all the guys that I had as idols, and I think it's very important because of the action-reaction principle, that you get it from low to high, and you get the automatic reaction at the end from high to low. And so I work very much on it in relation to like how you travel around. My optimal throw would be to have like a parallel backswing to the shoulders, then 1 foot under behind the butt going in, then 1 foot over the parallel, the difference of 2 feet, like I said before, and that is pretty much the optimal path of the discus. I really don't have an answer for why people are not carrying the right way around. You have to ask the other coaches. I've never really figured out why that would be hard to do.
And I noticed in your coaching lecture that was filmed in 2018, you mentioned that Daniel needed to improve a bit on his orbit. Is that improvement what allowed him to have such a great year last year?
Yeah. We actually, you know, Nothing really changed in 2019 except that Daniel got 1 year older and a little bit more experienced, and there was a technical difference that made the difference in relation to the biomechanical analysis that we got. And I got like 3-4 guys to have a second opinion on the biomechanical analysis, and that was to have a little bit longer step into the middle with a discus a little bit lower behind the butt before he would lift it up. And in this throw, he does it really well. But he used to throw it up right away when he would go into the sprint. And that means that path was totally wrong. That he would throw it up way too early, and then when he would land in the power position with the left, it would be down. Then you pretty much throw it from your pocket, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't get the long path and speed of release because it has to come from high to low into the finish.
Got it.
Here is one of Daniel's strengths. He's landing in a very good balance. He's always on balance when he lands in the middle. It's very, very important. He's touching there. You see the discus is way behind and it's up at that time. Left is turning over, and it's super good landing in the middle of the circle, half a foot over the middle line if you take it across the circle, like towards the direction of the throw. Used to be short step, is much longer now, and he's landing in a perfect balance with the discus up, very strong hips at the same time, and left arm is pretty much where it should be. This is very, Daniel can do sometimes a bad throw and still land in this position. So what does that mean? Well, that's a reason for he throws far very often, because he always lands in good position. Then it's just a question about how much speed he can generate because of the action reaction. And that is pretty much the difference between a good throw and a bad throw for Daniel. He can technically do a little wrong from the turn into the sprint and still always land on balance. And that's just him.
Does he have amazing upper body flexibility for a big guy?
Yeah, Daniel is, like I said before, he's strong as a bull and smooth as a cat. He's a very, very flexible, strong guy, and very big, very long arms, and very good balance and very good understanding of how to throw. So he's pretty much like a perfect discus thrower in relation to body type. I actually never thought I would coach such a big guy, but he loves to lift the weights, and he's born very big, and he's very tall and very long arms, and I just love it because there is so much capacity. It's just crazy.
When you said Daniel was short when you first started working with him, you needed to get him deeper into the ring. Was that a function of driving more off the left, or a little more sitting in? How did you get him to accomplish that? Because to be honest, as big as he is, I think he would fight the other thing, and that is driving too far to the front.
Yeah, he was actually driving pretty short, and he took his foot, so to speak, under himself, like lifted the right heel up. And you know what I think? I think he adapted it from his mom. His mom was a discus thrower and also a powerlifter from Finland, Taina. And I remember how she threw, because she threw against my wife. Oh. And my wife used to compete in the 80s, and then Taina competed against her. And I know and remember how she threw, and Daniel has the same movements. Kind of pulling away to the left and lifting the right heel up. So he was like taking the foot up, you know, in the sprint. And because of that, everything went over to the left, and he had a very short sprint. And that was just because he was young and eager. He just wanted to go hard. I mean, you know that everybody always wants to go away, and And he was just one of those kids that did that. But he had never the problem that he would go too far. But it was probably because he was so big and strong from the beginning that he just wanted to rip the hell out of the discus instead of trying to be long.
Coach, is this the optimal angle for his toes to be pointing to as the foot lands? Is that what
I like it. Some people would like to turn it more. Some people would like to turn it less and have more time on the ground to turn. I think this suits really well. I cannot see very much wrong here. It's a very good position, and that's the reason I'm showing you this throw, because there is a lot of good stuff here. But of course, he's not perfect, and we saw the left foot was not perfect, but this is a very good position. Here's another good position. You see the balance on the right leg, how he lands on there is actually on the inside of the foot. A lot of people there land on the outside of the foot, so the knee would be falling away there. He's in a very good position on the right foot there. And you see also there's a very good plantation on the left foot. It's coming down. Left shoulder is high. There is tension in his upper body. Right hip or hips are very, very strong. Discus is over the shoulder, and there is a separation from the shoulder to the discus, and there is a separation from the shoulder to the hip. So this position is also one of my favorites. He's on the balls of the right foot there. He's very long, he's very relaxed. Left foot possibly a little bit too slow down, but do never, if you have a choice between speed and separation, choose speed. There's nothing that says that if Daniel would have landed a little bit earlier there, that he would have thrown further, because he would have the arm longer back. I have a lot of proofs for that, but I think this is good enough. And what I love about it is the tension in the body, is the length of the arms, is the balance, and how he plants his feet, and how strong he is in his hip when he lands. It's a very, very good position.
It's impressive, Coach, how he can open that left arm and lift that left shoulder, and all his weight stays back on his right.
Yeah. You know, he's back, and you see the tension in the upper body. He's taking the left shoulder and arm up at the same time, as you can see a little like a flexibility in his shoulder girdle there, on the right. It looks very good. There's definitely a very good tension in the upper body at the same time. And he's just cool on the right foot there, because he lands so well. This is also one of my favorite pictures. If you take first from down and up, the plantation of the feet, that is pretty much like a coaching example. We usually coach from toe to heel, from right to left, so he's not blocking himself. When Daniel throws bad, and when he throws like he used to, where he jumps a little bit up and pre-turns like in the sprint and doesn't get the long sprint, then he blocks himself and go to the right of the circle. He doesn't do that there. And here you can see, here is a big guy really attacking the discus. He's almost falling to the right. But left is down, and there's a huge smoothness there from shoulder to discus. You can see the flexibility of the shoulder there and the chest, even though he is such a big guy, that there is like a rubber band. And his long arm is really like a rubber band from the shoulder to the discus. It's a great attack position. Good separation, hip to shoulder and discus to shoulder to discus. Very elastic moves. And one of the absolute strengths of Daniel is the left side block. When he comes there, he's going into a brick wall there and stopping the left side. And that gives all the power to the right, and he can just explode.
Coach, in your training of Daniel, are there things you do to be careful not to let him lose that elasticity in his shoulders?
Yeah, when it comes to my training programs, it's very simple. I have like, it's all based on a lot of throwing with different weights, and then Olympic lifting and powerlifting, and then some fitness and flexibility work and that kind of stuff. But it's all about working also with professionals. I have a team of experts in all the countries that I worked with where they work with me, and I have a very good backup here in Sweden with Daniel, with physiotherapists that are very, very good, that are taking care of him in relation to keeping his flexibility, being in contact with me in relation to how his body is and that kind of stuff. So very good professional team actually, to keep him, to let him keep this talent that he is and not lose it. It's very easy to lose it if you do everything wrong. You never have treatment. You never do your stretching and that kind of stuff. But like, he's taking care of business, and he's a professional guy, and he knows what to do, and he follows what I tell him. And because of this attack position, here is what all biomechanical guys have told me that is the biggest strength of Daniel Ståhl. And that is, he's on the ground when he releases the discus, even though he's a reverse thrower. So he's not a jumper. He throws non-reverse, reverse. And I coach non-reverse, reverse. If people understand what I say, I want him to throw like a non-reverser with a reverse. And in every session, we do walkthroughs, we do static throws, non-reverse. And I don't even want to mention how far he has thrown from static position, non-reverse. It's ridiculous.
I think people would actually like to know that.
Huh?
I think people would be interested to know how far he's thrown that way.
He's thrown over 70 meters from static non-reverse.
Wow.
And that means that he has still not gotten the dream throw with the reverse without being static. So when Daniel throws from static, he throws from an unbelievably good position. And then when he throws non-reverse, he's on the ground. He's still struggling with controlling the reverse, but my honest belief is that he can throw within a year or two much further than he has done when he gets the dream throw with the reverse.
Is Daniel's static start any different than his normal start?
No, I just found out last year in 2019 that he was struggling a little bit with his swing and that kind of stuff. And then I just asked him, show me your swing, show me a stop in the back. And he did. And we figured out where he should be. And he started to walk from that position, and his hand is so big that he could just hold the discus in the backswing without that the discus would fall. So he just started to walk through, and I just couldn't believe how far he threw. He just walked through the circle and could throw unbelievable distances. And then I realized, wow, what is this going to be if he would be able to get speed on this? But of course, Daniel is a Formula One car. He's unbelievably big. There's unbelievable power and speed, and it's very, very hard to control. And we are still working on getting the dream throw with the reverse. And this throw is maybe the one that came the closest to that, and then he is within a meter or so from the world record. And what is making him throw so far in this throw? It's what we've been going through here, plus here at the end, he has this really, look at his left shoulder, hip, foot, how it stops. Look at the long range of motion on the right. Look at that he's on the ground when he releases the discus, and that gives him maximum speed, because the speed of release, contact on the ground, and flight of the discus is the most important to get the discus to fly. Those three things: speed of release, contact on the ground, and flight of the discus. And in that particular throw, he's doing that unbelievably well.
A couple more comments on the feet. One of the attendees makes a comparison between Daniel's feet in that picture and another one of your throwers or former throwers, I think you meant Nick Arrhenius, who tends to be a little more, so I'd call this the heel-toe alignment, and I think the comment is intended to say that Nick's feet were more parallel with one another, pointed down the middle of the sector. If I've interpreted the question correctly, do you have a preference, or is that again an individual thing?
It's an individual thing. I hate when people go into the sprint to the right of the circle and block themselves. That's terrible. So if you look at Fredrik Dacus and see how he lands, then he goes a little bit over to the left. I much rather that, because then you have an open passage forward, so you can you not block yourself. In this case, Daniel, left foot is coming down there, and you see it a little bit closed, and then he's on the ground. I think it's very, very good. And there's no preference here, because everybody's different. But like I said, I really don't like when you don't have the sprint and you don't get with the right hip towards your left sector, so you can get the separation in the middle of the circle, and you end up blocking yourself with your left. That's terrible.
And Brian Bedard asks, or makes the observation, looks like the right foot losing contact with the ground before the left. Any thoughts about that?
But the right foot is on the ground before the left?
Losing contact with the ground before the left foot.
Yeah.
Right foot. Yeah.
Yeah, like Americans have preference of taking the left foot off the ground before the right. I have a preference of doing it at the same time. Daniel throws the discus, and after the discus leaves his hand, right foot comes a little bit earlier off the ground. I have no problems with that, because the discus is gone. There he finishes up, and what he's good at here, he follows through really well. He has a maximum radius on the arm, and he keeps himself tall. And he gets a good attack on the discus, so the attack angle is good, the flight is good. Daniel is usually not that good on that, but if you look at the discus there, if you can see it, it's actually going out the right way. Still, I think how is Daniel Ståhl going to break the world record? One of the things that he needs to get better at is to spin the discus better and get the attack angle to be better. And that's very much related to his reverse, and also that he gets the right path on the discus in the sprint. He fights the reverse. He's holding it very long. He's very tall and long and relaxed at the same time as he follows through really well. So he's usually very good at this, and he was very mad that he fouled this throw. He said it was unnecessary. And there's nothing really that says that he should, if you take the next picture. And why am I showing you a foul throw? It's because you can learn from it. This was very close. This was very close to be one of the best throws ever in history. And he's landing inside the circle, and he's very tall, He's full of adrenaline. He screams. He's on his home turf. And he said, I probably fouled it because it was my home turf and I was just too excited. There is nothing really in the throw that says that he should have fouled it. And he felt very mad after and was not very happy with it. But then at the same time, do I like to foul like Brian Oldfield used to say? No, I don't like to foul, but I like the capacity. I like if people foul a 73-meter throw, then it's going to come sooner or later, and that's what I like. I like the capacity. I like the speed in this throw. I like the capacity. Pretty good technique, unbelievable, inspiration, motivation, scream. You want to perform for your home crowd, and you're so close.
So just to summarize on the foul, you wouldn't point to any specific thing he could have done differently to avoid the foul?
No.
Okay.
But it's probably a very small margin because he said it was unnecessary. He said he looked after the discus. I'm not so sure if he did, but it's probably just a minimal, like you're shifting the weight, maybe a little bit more reaction, maybe earlier in the push at the finish or something like that. But I cannot see in relation to all his throws last year. He had 8 throws in 3 meets over 70 meters. And he didn't really foul very much at all. But this was by far the furthest throw of the year. And because it's my favorite throw, I just wanted to analyze it, even though it was a foul throw. And you see there that he steps over and gets kind of mad at himself. He measured it afterwards, and it was 72.95. And that's the furthest throw he has ever thrown. And it was so close to be not a foul. Then at the same time, my opinion in relation to Daniel's static walkthroughs and non-reverse throws is that he has his best throw in front of him.
Could you talk a little more about your preferred approach to use a non-reverse reverse, and maybe specifically, are there any technical points you could emphasize or things that you do in practice to make sure that he adheres to that particular style of throwing?
Yeah, I think all kids, young kids that start to throw should throw non-reverse in the beginning, even though you would teach them reverse, so they would learn to be on the ground. Most kids jump around and upper body goes in front and they don't get the discus to fly and that kind of stuff. And then when you get older and better, it's all about speed and it's all about contact. And you can't get speed if you're off the ground. You have to be on the ground and to be able to like get speed, you have to be, with contact with the circle when you land in the power position. And that means that it's very, very important to be able to have a good separation and a good path on the discus when you throw non-reverse. And I've always had that theory, and Daniel throws 25 to 50% of his throws non-reverse. And all my guys do, the shot putters also. And for the last couple of years, we have done a lot of static pre-turn throws also to control the start and also for me to see where they feel where they want to be. And so I all built it on teaching young people how to throw with contact on the ground, because the reverse is just a thing that happens after the throw. And it's just pretty much like a reaction. But most people throw further with reverse, and of course we should then do it, but we cannot use it if we just jump around and the reverse comes too early and we're all off the ground and that kind of stuff.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, as you can probably tell, we're beginning our Q&A session now. So Roger's going to keep sharing questions you've submitted. We'll do our best to get through as many as we can. And at the end of this session, Vésteinn's going to choose the best or most interesting question, no pressure. And the person who submitted it will receive free access to his lecture on discus theory. You'll get that via the wonder of email. So Roger, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. So since we're still talking about reverse, there's an attendee, Maddie Weiger, who says that when she reverses, her left foot slides on her. Is that which sounds to me like it maybe is a reverse that wants to show up? Is there a manner in which your throwers need to perform non-reverse throws so something like that wouldn't happen?
Yeah, you turn into the push. You turn with your right foot when left lands, and then you push. And you push the ground away, but you don't jump away from the ground. You push the ground away, you turn. The first thing that happens when you land with the left leg in the power position, you turn the foot and then you push early. And if you do that, you push the ground away. That's the easiest way of explaining a reverse.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask a question from Kevin McGill, and it's a little bit something you've addressed, but I want it to be considered here. Daniel seems to crowd the front in many of the throws Kevin's seen on YouTube, and it looks like he's in danger on fouling those throws. It appears that he leans to the center on his entry. Could he cut this back a slight bit and be more rotational than linear in order to get the release velocity he wants without the danger of fouling the big throw?
Well, in relation to all the Diamond League meets and all those big meets he has been competing in for the last year, he has not been having a foul problem. But of course, there are different ways of doing this, and this point could be something, and I would take it into consideration that it could be a factor. But the way I've been coaching is that he would get a very strong linear sprint, and when he would come into the power position, he would turn into the push. And he follows through very much, and that means that it's possible that there is something else there that could be done, but he is not having a foul problem. So that's a misconception.
Okay.
Even though we are talking about a foul throw here.
Yeah. Well, would Mary F. asks, how do we find the optimal release angle for each athlete? And given that probably the sprint across the rings with strong hips are so important, would you suggest bounds, single, double leg bounds, to be an important accessory exercise?
Bounds? What do you mean there?
Plyometric jumping.
Oh, no. It's all related to throwing. You cannot get better at throwing the discus by doing just plyometrics. That's nothing to do with technique. You have to do it in a circle. And release angle in a lot of cases is like 37.5 to 38 degrees. We can't really use that for anything when we're coaching, but we know how the discus is supposed to go out there, and the attack wing angle is very important. And to be able to get the right angle is the most important, how the path of the discus is going those 10 feet that you travel around. That's the biggest problem. A lot of people have a wrong release angle because the orbit is wrong. So I would answer it that way.
Okay. There's been several questions about Daniel's. We know he's strong and he's flexible. We've spoken about that. What about speed work outside the circle? Sprinting, things like that.
Well, you can guess. You have a 160 kilo guy. I would be an idiot if I would let him jump. I would also be pretty stupid if I would let him sprint, because he has a flat foot and number 52 in Europe, or 51. So his size is so big that we don't do any sprints and we don't do any jumps. Nothing.
Okay.
All is based on powerlifting, Olympic lifting, and throwing. Nothing else.
If you looked, well, let's assuming we weren't in the condition that we're in this year, but as you looked forward to this year normally, when you think about the things that would contribute to Daniel's throwing farther, is technique more important than strength, more important than speed? How do you think about those things for Daniel?
Daniel has learned to compete, so the mental aspect has gotten much better, even though he was a little nervous at the Worlds because he was the first time like a big favorite. And people that don't know his story is that he had never won anything until he won this year. And that's not like a habit of Daniel Ståhl when he was young, that he would win every European Junior Championship or World Junior Championship. He has never won anything until this last year. And mentally he grew with that, and he of course won the Diamond League, and he had the furthest throw in the world, and so mentally has grown tremendously, and socially. So that is under control. That is usually the most important things to throw far, to feel good in where you live and have good friends and family and that kind of stuff. I always look at the person first. So the athletes come second, and then to be able to compete. And he has learned to compete through the years, so he's the best discus thrower in the world now, and he can perform. In relation to strength, people can guess, does Daniel Ståhl needs to get stronger when you have done 350 kilos in deadlift for 5 and that kind of stuff? Definitely not. Does he need to get bigger? No. So what is it all about? It's a technical details that is going to make him faster. And in relation to that, I look at 3-4 things that we need to get better at, and I talked about it already. A little bit more tension in the start, so he would get a little bit more speed across the circle, and that he would be able to turn the foot and push the right foot a little bit earlier at the end. So the tension in the start would give him a better speed across the circle, and he would turn the right foot and push the right foot a little bit earlier at the end, and that would give him more speed of release. And maybe the most important thing, that he would get better flight on the discus, and that would give him the world record.
It sounds like you were fortunate with both Daniel and Gerd to get the orbits right. Gerd, I think you said earlier, had a particularly high point. Are there things that perhaps your other throwers you have to work on more to get orbits that you like? And if so, what would those things be? How do you get them to achieve better orbits?
It's usually based on that, when right leg comes off or right foot comes off the ground in the turn, that's where the problem starts. Yeah, right there where you take the right leg off, the next picture there. there you wanna go and pull the left shoulder. And when you pull the left shoulder, it takes the right arm with you, and the high point gets to be too early. And the slower the high point comes, the better reaction you get at the end. It is as simple as that. But a lot of coaches would probably not agree with me on that, but I've studied all the best people in the world that are my favorites, and that was Vigilius Alekna in 2000. It was Jürgen Schult when he was at his best. It was Mac Wilkins when he had the right orbit. And it was John Powell, very good on it also. And he taught me a lot about that. And it's pretty much that people throw the discus up too early. So when they land with the left in the power position, it's actually down.
Right there, if we can go right there, when we talked through this the first time, you talked about Daniel having tension between his knees coming out of the back. Again, are there cues, or can you describe particular feelings or body positions that help him understand what it is you want him to accomplish by either maintaining tension or creating more tension? Yeah.
It's pretty much where you, if you think about that, you take one picture back there. If you think you have a medicine ball in between your feet there, and then you would keep on turning the left foot, so the left foot will almost like pull the right leg to come off the ground. That's what I'm talking about. The best guy in the world on this, on the men's side, is Frederick Dacus. That's one of the reasons that Dacus gets this unbelievable sprint across the circle. He's by far the best one in relation to the sprint, the attacking into the middle of the circle. And that's because of his tension. And that's pretty much timing the right foot coming off the ground with the left foot, full turn of the left foot. That is pretty much, it's a great feeling when you get that, because then you get an automatic reaction into the middle. That would give you then a very good sprint, and then the right hip would go towards the left sector with discus being low behind your butt. And that is going to give you the reaction at the end and speed of release.
Do we, so I'm going to let you talk about this. We've got quite a number of questions queued up here, as you might imagine. But there's a couple of questions that ask about Daniel's goals for the next few years. Are those things that you can share with us?
Yeah, like a lot of journalists in Sweden asked us last year, what's the goal? And I asked them, can you guess? When you've gotten 2 silvers in a row, what's your goal? Of course, to win. And if you have thrown the fourth to fifth furthest throw in the world ever, and you have the second best top 10 average in a season of anybody, and happens to be that it's Gerd Kanter that has the best one, and I coach him also. What's the goal? Of course, the goal is to break the world record and win more golds and hopefully the Olympic gold. But like Daniel says himself, it's not like ordering a pizza. It's not that easy. And we are going towards the world record, and we believe both that he can throw the world record, and it has to be done within 2 years or so because of his age. He's prime time now, and he could be prime time 1 or 2 more years to throw that far. But then after that, it's more about getting more medals and winning more meets. But like, we are going for the world record.
Okay. Do you do much throwing with overweight or underweight implements?
No underweight implements, but we do We do pretty much discus tool, 2.5 kilos sometimes, and up to 3 kilos. And I started to do that because first when the tool came, it was called Jürgen Schultz Denfi tool. So I called up Jürgen and asked him about this tool. And he didn't really know much about it because they just got to know his name, use his name. The Denfi Discus company just used its name, and he didn't really have a clue what the tool was about at that time. So I just decided when that tool came, when I was training Gerd, to test it out. And I've always liked the tool because you throw it better than the discus. That's the reason I use the tool, but not the pin or a heavy discus, because I want to keep touch with the discus being 2 kilo for the men and 1 kilo for women. I don't want to lose touch with the discus by throwing 2.5 kilo discus, because that's very boring to throw 2.5 kilo discus. But like if you throw the tool, it's actually fun, and you throw it very, very far, and it's like usually 32 to 36 centimeters. And because it's long, and it's because it's elastic, you throw it technically perfect. That's the reason I let Gerd throw the tool, and he threw the 2.5 32 centimeter tool 75-50. Daniel has thrown the 3.1 36 centimeter tool 72-50. And they both throw it much better than the discus. So what can you do better with the athlete but throw a heavy implement technically really good? That's the reason I do.
And do you actually use their implements, or do you have your own made? Do you
My
use
own name, what do you mean?
the Denfi? Do you use the Denfi product?
Well, Denfi came with this tool first, and since that you can buy it everywhere, and we have just gotten it through different companies, and they are pretty much like, I just try to let the athletes compete against themselves. Daniel is so strong that he has been throwing heavier tool than most of my guys, but I've never went over 3.1 kilos. But a lot of guys like Simon and Jakob and those other guys, they've been throwing 2.5 kilo, and Gerd never threw heavier than 2.5 kilo. And it worked out really well because it also is fun. You throw it far, you compete against each other, and you throw technically really well with it.
There's quite a number of questions about weightlifting, and you've mentioned he does both powerlifting and Olympic lifting exercises. If you in 2 minutes, can you kind of summarize your feelings about the aspects of weightlifting that help Daniel the most? We already know he's an exceptionally strong guy.
Yeah, Daniel is different than a lot of other guys because he's a very big guy. He doesn't have the energy that, if you take like Simon Pettersson that I coach, he's a former decathlete, very fit guy, very light guy, and can train all day. Daniel is a huge guy, and I have to choose the exercises that Daniel gets most out of. And it happens to be that Daniel loves to lift weights, and we use mostly back squats, bench press on an incline dumbbell, sumo deadlift, and push press. Is that optimal? For him, it is, because he loves those lifts. And how do I use them? I don't do any power cleans with him. We do clean pulls. Sometimes every other session with sumo deadlift. And then we do push press and press behind the neck every other session. And then we do bench press, regular bench press, or incline dumbbell press. And mostly back squats. He loves those exercises. He's very strong in all of them. But of course, because of his long arms, his bench press is not the biggest because he has to travel a long way. but he's very strong on the incline dumbbell press. And I use the weights to get general horsepower, but all the specific horsepower is done on the field, throw. And so everything is based more or less on those exercises. It's very simple, and I periodicize it. And the biggest reps and sets he does is 5x5, between 70 to 87.5%. And then we go from 5x5 to 4x5, and then from 4x5 to 3x5, and then from 3x5 to 5-4-3, and then from 5-4-3 to 3-3. And the intensity we usually keep. So I regulate the volume and keep the intensity, and that's the way we peak. And then at the same time, as I'm taking it down from 5x5 to 3x3, then we throw a little bit less and we throw harder.
Roger, we're down to about 5 minutes here.
There's been a few questions in regards to, again, John Powell's throwing style. And on this slide in particular, when I saw it, I remember John used the term, he used to skate his feet. Now, clearly, Daniel's not doing that. Do you have a particular style, again, for how you get your athletes to move from the back to the middle? How long in the flight phase, perhaps how high? What objectives are they trying to achieve when they move from leaving the left to right foot touchdown?
Yeah, it's very much all about going forward, because if we take how the Germans coach, I've been around Harting Brothers and company. I've talked to Jürgen Schultz pretty much. I was a good friend, I am a good friend of Wolfgang Schmidt. And it's very much horizontal power across the circle, not jumping up. Dropping the left knee, coming from the left foot turn, driving the open right leg across. And I very often coach it like maybe some American coaches have done. We turn around the left shoulder axis, and for a microsecond we are leaning towards the right sector. And then we drive the right leg and right hip under the left shoulder, so to speak, how we think it, towards the left sector. And then you get the optimal out of the sprint, and you are upright when you do that. So you're actually sprinting first towards the right sector to get around in the turn, and then you drive across with your right hip towards the left sector, and then you get the response into the power position.
Roger, I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, well, there's only about 50 open here. Let's talk about, I don't think Coach has talked about this yet. Do you subscribe to the philosophy that throwing has a rhythm? And if so, is that something that you help Daniel to either achieve or to maintain?
Yeah, it's very important with rhythm, and of course the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You take one on when right foot comes off the ground, then you're on 1, and then 2, 3, and on 3 your left leg is down. On 4 you push the right leg forward and the left block up, and you can see that on that throw. It's very rhythmical, and in relation to getting maximum speed, I think it's all about rhythm and path of the discus. If you do that, then you're going to get maximum speed. I think people get too much caught up on something that we can call perfect technique. There is nothing that is perfect. There is a lot of this in this particular throw that could be done better, but it has to be pretty good if you throw almost 73 meters. But it's unbelievable power and speed. There is long path, there is long range of motion. There is transfer of energy. There is good, center of gravity and balance. You involve the whole body. You sum all the forces towards the direction of the throw. This is just theory, and a lot of stuff is right here. But we cannot say that this throw is perfect. And I think some coaches and some athletes, they get too caught up on technique and separation and lose speed. Speed is number one, and contact on the ground and flight of the discus. And I'm not saying that technique is not important. Of course it's important. And Daniel is struggling to throw technically a huge throw with reverse. And we are working on that. And I'm absolutely sure he's going to get it. And then he's going to throw probably over 75 meters.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. A couple reminders here at the end. We'll get Vésteinn's choice for the most interesting question afterwards, and we will email the winner. As you guys have been great students, Global Throwing is going to send you a PDF analysis, very similar to the slides you saw today with Vésteinn's comments. They will email that to you. Please check out their lectures on CoachTube. They are fantastic. Like I said, I recently watched the discus, the practical discus session, and Vésteinn has his great athletes demonstrate many of the concepts that he went over today. They're just outstanding, and you get a 20% off promo code for that. Thanks so much to Global Throwing. Thank you, Hans at Global Throwing, for making this possible. Thanks most of all to Vésteinn Hafsteinsson for sharing your knowledge with us. That was fantastic.
Thank you very much. So it's happy to be with you.
All right. Take care, everybody. We hope to see you at future webinars.